He thought it was a chance to be discovered. Instead, it became a fight to survive. Now, he's exposing what really happened inside Diddy's mansion. He stood up slowly, hands trembling just enough to betray the fear he tried to bury. The courtroom was still, press packed into the back rows, cameras rolling, every breath held. Across from him sat the man he once believed could change his life, Sean P. Diddy Combs. But Jaylen Hart wasn't here to chase a dream anymore. He was here to break the silence. "I thought it was just a party," he said, voice quiet but sharp. "That's what they told us. An invite-only event for young talent. They promised exposure, contracts, a chance to be seen." He paused, staring at Diddy. The rapper didn't blink, didn't move. But what really happened inside that house? Jaylen looked down, then back up, stronger now. "Some of us didn't make it out." Gasps rippled through the room. One of the jurors shifted uncomfortably. The judge asked for silence, but the tension had already taken hold. Jaylen cleared his throat. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my friends can't be. I survived. They didn't. And people deserve to know what happens behind those walls, because it wasn't just music and lights. It was something else." His hands gripped the railing tighter. That wasn't a party. That was a trap. The courtroom fell silent again. Only this time, it wasn't out of order. It was fear, shock, and the sense that what Jaylen was about to reveal could shatter everything. Jaylen Hart had been chasing a dream. He wasn't naive. He grew up in Detroit, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs and still found time to push him toward his music. He had talent, no doubt. Smooth vocals, sharp writing, a quiet charisma that made people stop and listen. But in an industry drowning in noise, talent alone didn't guarantee a damn thing. So when a message popped up on his manager's phone, "Exclusive event, private showcase, hosted by Diddy himself," Jaylen didn't question it. He saw a door, an opportunity, and he stepped through. He was flown out to Los Angeles with 5 other unsigned artists, all young, all hungry. The invitation was vague, but tempting. A weekend retreat at one of Diddy's private properties. No cameras, no press. Just music, connections, and the right people in the room. The place was massive. An estate tucked into the hills behind gates so tall, they seemed built to keep secrets in, not danger out. Everything screamed wealth. Marble floors, walls lined with art, staff in black suits moving like ghosts. Phones were taken at the door. For privacy, they said. At first, it felt like a dream. They were welcomed with champagne, led into a lounge that felt like a palace. Diddy wasn't there right away, but the energy was high. People mingled, producers, influencers. Some faces Jaylen recognized from music videos and Instagram. It felt real, tangible, like his life was finally turning a corner. But as the sun set, the vibe changed. One of the other artists, a girl named Amaya, leaned over and whispered, "Have you noticed how many of us are under 25? Jaylen hadn't. But now it felt obvious. Then they were split up. 2 talent managers approached, asked Jaylen to follow them upstairs for a one-on-one conversation. "The big guy wants to meet you," they said. "He's been watching your clips." Jaylen followed. Why wouldn't he? He was led into a room with dark walls, soft lighting, and a leather couch. They offered him a drink. He declined. The vibe was off. He was told to wait. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then one of the men returned. Not Diddy, but someone in a suit too expensive to be anyone unimportant. "You're gonna do well here," the man said. "Just follow the rules. Keep your head down, don't ask questions." That's when Jaylen knew. This wasn't a networking weekend. It was something else entirely. He didn't sleep that night. Every few hours he heard footsteps in the hallway, doors opening and closing, a girl crying. Once, he thought he heard someone scream, muffled, brief, then silence. He wasn't allowed back downstairs. Food was brought to his room. No phone. No clock. No way to know how long he'd been there. On the second day, he tried to leave. Told one of the staff he felt sick. The man smiled too hard and said, "Mr. Combs would prefer you stay. He's very interested in you." That night, one of the artists he arrived with, Malik, was taken to the studio room. Jaylen never saw him again. By the third day, Jaylen stopped asking questions. He stayed quiet, watched, memorized faces. He didn't know if he was a guest or a prisoner. But on the fourth night, something changed. A janitor, older, quiet, eyes tired, came into Jaylen's room just before midnight. He didn't say much, just handed Jaylen a small backpack and said, "Back door, now." Jaylen didn't think. He just ran. Down the hall, through a kitchen, past a staircase he hadn't seen before. He stumbled through a service exit and into the trees behind the property. Ran until his legs gave out. Slept in a drainage pipe near a golf course until sunrise. He didn't go to the police. Who would believe him? Instead, he disappeared. He shaved his head, dyed his beard, changed cities. Took a job under a fake name and tried to pretend it never happened. But he couldn't. Because 2 months later, he looked up one of the artists he'd arrived with. She hadn't posted since that night. 3 others were the same. Silent. Gone. And Malik? There was a news article. Young musician missing in Los Angeles. Last seen leaving for a private event. Jaylen knew the truth. And now, in court, he was finally ready to say it. The courtroom was silent as Jaylen paused, fingers gripping the edge of the witness stand like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "They said it was about music," he continued, his voice steadier now. "About launching young talent. But when I left that house, 4 of the people I came with never left at all." Gasps echoed softly through the gallery. The judge didn't have to call for order. No one dared to interrupt. Jaylen looked over at the jury. "I've replayed it 1,000 times. I remember every face. Malik, the one with the raspy voice. Amaya, who sang like she had a choir in her throat. Carlos, who made beats with just a phone. And Bree. She was just 17. He swallowed. "I tried reaching out after I escaped. I didn't want to believe what I was thinking. I thought maybe they were just traumatized like me. Hiding, moving on. But their accounts were dead, phones off. Families didn't know where they were." The prosecutor stepped forward gently. "Jaylen, when you came to us, what did you bring?" Jaylen reached into the folder in front of him. With shaking hands, he pulled out a flash drive and held it up. "This was hidden in my sock the night I ran. I recorded what I could while locked in that room. Conversations, voices. One clip from behind the door. Someone crying and saying they wanted to go home." The defense objected. "No verification of origin. No forensic chain." The judge cut in. "Objection noted. Let the prosecution proceed." The flash drive was submitted into evidence. The jury was instructed to listen later in deliberation. But Jaylen's words were already doing the damage. The prosecutor asked, "Did you ever report this to the authorities?" Jaylen nodded slowly. "A year later. I couldn't carry it anymore. I found someone I trusted. She worked with victims of trafficking. She helped me understand what I went through wasn't just fear. It was grooming. It was entrapment. And if I didn't speak, I'd be part of the silence that lets this keep happening." He looked directly at Diddy for the first time since the testimony began. "You knew what you were doing. You weren't just throwing parties. You were building a system. You invited us into a cage." Diddy didn't move, but the lawyers on either side of him shifted, stiffened. The judge called for a short recess. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as Jaylen was escorted into a side room with his attorney. As soon as the door closed behind them, he collapsed into the chair. "I feel like I just told the world I'm not crazy," he said quietly. His attorney smiled, though there was sadness in her eyes. "They're listening now," she said. "And you're not the only one." Because Jaylen's words had cracked the wall. After his first appearance on the stand, more people started coming forward, quietly at first. Anonymous messages sent to the prosecutor's office. Tip lines ringing nonstop. Former assistants, a driver, even a former security staff member who admitted, under oath, that there were areas of Diddy's house locked from the inside that only certain staff had access to. The stories had eerie similarities. Young people invited under the guise of mentorship. Phones taken. No way to leave. Some were paid off after. Others were threatened. And some were never heard from again. Investigators uncovered internal schedules from staff that listed names and codes next to rooms. O1, B4, hold. No explanation given. But Jaylen recognized some of those codes. They matched the floors and hallways he'd been confined to. Every new piece of evidence began to paint a picture that could no longer be brushed off as rumor or coincidence. Jaylen's testimony wasn't a flare in the dark. It was the start of an avalanche. The court resumed after recess, but the air had changed. Something had shifted, not just in the jury or the audience, but in the eyes of the judge himself. He no longer saw this as a celebrity trial or a high-profile drama. This had become something deeper, darker, something about human lives lost in the shadows of wealth and fame. Jaylen returned to the stand, and this time, he wasn't alone in his courage. A second witness had come forward during the break, a woman, late 20s, dressed modestly. Her name was Renee, and she had been a private chef for Diddy during the same period Jaylen described. She'd never spoken publicly before, never had a reason, or the strength. But hearing Jaylen broke something loose in her. Under oath, she told the court what she saw. "There were parts of the house I wasn't allowed to enter," she said. "Rooms that were always locked. Sometimes I'd hear things, crying, yelling, but I was told to ignore it. One time I asked a manager if I should call someone. He looked at me and said, 'You want to keep this job, keep your ears shut.'" Renee described once delivering food to a back wing of the house. A staffer met her halfway, took the tray, and slammed the door shut. She never saw who the food was for. She just remembered hearing someone whisper from inside, "Please, just call my mom." The courtroom froze again. Jaylen lowered his head, fists tight in his lap. He wasn't imagining it. He wasn't alone. As the trial unfolded, so did the puzzle. Federal investigators presented documents seized during the raid on Diddy's estate. Detailed logs of arrivals and departures, including artists, influencers, and unidentified visitors. A digital access log showed certain rooms, soundproofed and locked, were entered during those weekends, and never again. But the most damning piece came from a former security team member, testifying under a grant of immunity. His name was Marcus Reed. He was clean-cut, composed, a man who'd once sworn to protect the very system he was now unraveling. "I worked for Diddy for 4 years, he told the court. "My job was to monitor movement during events, escort guests, and make sure nothing left the house. Not information, not footage, and definitely not people who weren't supposed to." Reed went on to say that several of the young artists invited to private events were never logged as leaving the property. They'd arrive Friday night, phones taken, IDs copied. After that, I don't know where some of them went. Sometimes the staff was told they got picked up early, but the cars weren't registered. They didn't check out with any hotel. The jury listened, jaws clenched. Every piece of the puzzle now had context. The flash drive, the cries through the walls, the missing names, the sealed rooms, and the money. Because investigators also uncovered another pattern. Large cash withdrawals from shell companies linked to Diddy's enterprise. Withdrawals timed suspiciously close to the dates of these weekend events. Money that disappeared with no paper trail, routed through charities and offshore accounts. Jaylen watched all of it from the front row of the courtroom. no longer on the stand, but present at every moment. Sometimes he took notes. Sometimes he just closed his eyes, gripping the edge of the bench as the truth unraveled publicly. He wasn't numb. He was remembering. One afternoon, during a particularly detailed cross-examination, Diddy himself was asked to speak. His lawyers protested. The judge allowed it. Diddy stood, adjusted his cufflinks, and spoke. "These allegations are wild, slanderous, and absolutely false," he said. "I've worked with hundreds of artists, helped build careers. I don't need to trap anyone to be successful. This is a smear campaign, nothing more." His voice was smooth, practiced. Jaylen didn't flinch, because he remembered that voice in the hallway, late at night, through the door that locked behind him. It was that same calm tone, the one that told you everything was fine while the walls slowly closed in. Outside the courthouse, the media storm exploded. Hashtags, protesters, fans in disbelief, artists defending him, then deleting posts hours later. Former collaborators started to fall silent. Some released statements. Others disappeared from public view entirely. What began as one man's story was becoming something the industry couldn't ignore. The system was cracking. And behind it, the world was seeing what Jaylen always knew. Behind the lights, behind the fame, behind the music, there were secrets. And some of them were buried in silence. Jaylen sat in the courtroom every day, like it was church. Not because he worshipped what was happening, but because, for once, truth had a microphone. And he wasn't letting it go. By now, the courtroom had become more than a legal venue. It was a stage, a battleground, a confession booth, and a breaking point all at once. But while the case was gaining momentum, the defense team wasn't backing down. They came prepared. High-powered attorneys, former federal prosecutors, PR consultants shaping the narrative outside the courtroom. Diddy's team worked around the clock, trying to dismantle the prosecution's case, not just with arguments, but with optics. They painted Jaylen as unstable. "Mr. Hart disappeared for nearly a year after the alleged incident," one of the defense lawyers said. "No police report, no hospital record, no proof he even attended this retreat." Jaylen remained calm. "That's because I didn't run to the cops," he replied. "I ran for my life." The jury watched him, saw the pause, the weight of those words. And you could feel something shift. Not everyone needs a badge to believe pain. Then came the angle they thought would break him, a tabloid leak. Days before his second round of questioning, a story broke online claiming Jaylen had been arrested years ago for drug possession. The article was vague. Old mugshot, no conviction. It was a smear tactic, and everyone knew it. But it didn't work. Jaylen addressed it before the prosecution could. "I've made mistakes," he told the court. "That doesn't mean what happened to me, and to the others, isn't real. If anything, it made me easier to target." The judge let him speak. The jury listened. Even some of Diddy's own fans online began questioning what they once defended. More witnesses followed. A driver, who once worked for the estate, described late-night drop-offs and silent pickups. People he wasn't allowed to speak to. A nurse who had been hired off the books for a single weekend event testified that she treated a young man with a concussion, but was told to forget I ever saw him. But the most damning moment came from a woman named Trina, one of the missing artists Jaylen thought had vanished. She had been in rehab, not dead, not gone, just trying to piece herself back together. Her voice trembled as she took the stand. "I was there," she said, eyes wet. "Jaylen's not lying. They separated us, took our phones. I woke up in a room I didn't recognize. My clothes were gone. I asked for help. I was told it was part of the experience." The defense tried to shake her. "Why come forward now?" She looked over at Jaylen, then back at the lawyer. "Because I saw someone stand up, and I realized, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I wasn't alone. That line cracked the silence in the room. A few jurors glanced at each other. One woman visibly wiped a tear. Outside, the media frenzy intensified. Protesters gathered in support of the victims. Diddy's team scrambled. A few of his sponsors pulled out quietly. Interviews were canceled. Damage control wasn't working anymore. The narrative had changed. What began as one man's testimony was now a movement. Heard at last, trended on social media. Survivors from unrelated cases began sharing their own stories. Musicians, assistants, background dancers. The entertainment industry had long buried secrets beneath platinum records and sold-out tours. But now, the cracks were too wide to ignore. Jaylen stayed silent through the chaos. He gave no interviews, turned down every podcast and news anchor. He let the courtroom do the talking, and it did. Every day, the prosecution built its wall of truth, brick by brick. And the defense? They were running out of excuses. Even their experts, psychologists, investigators, image consultants, couldn't explain away the mounting pile of stories, documents, and lived pain. Then, the prosecution rested its case. Final witnesses testified. Closing statements were scheduled. Jaylen would have one last chance to speak. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't even angry anymore. He just wanted to finish what he started. Jaylen stood one final time. The courtroom was quiet, not because people didn't care, but because everyone knew this was the moment. He didn't look at Diddy. He looked at the jury. "I never wanted this," he said. "I didn't want cameras. I didn't want headlines. I wanted to forget. But forgetting meant letting them get away with it. And that, I couldn't live with." His voice didn't shake. Not anymore. "They told me it was a party. Told me I'd leave with a contract. I left with scars. The others? Some never left at all." He took a breath, then another. "I came here with the truth. You can believe me, or you can go back to pretending. But know this, if you let them win, there will be more like me. And next time, maybe the person standing here won't be lucky enough to survive." He stepped down. The jury deliberated for hours, not days, hours. When the foreman returned, he didn't make eye contact with Diddy, just stood and read, "Guilty on all primary charges." A gasp, then silence. Diddy sat motionless, jaw clenched, empire cracking behind his eyes. Jaylen didn't celebrate. He just exhaled. Walked out of that courtroom with no entourage, no applause, just freedom. The kind that comes not from escaping fear, but confronting it. Outside, the reporters swarmed. "Do you have anything to say?" He turned to the cameras and said only one thing. "My name is Jaylen Hart, and I am not afraid anymore." Then, he walked into the sunlight. The system may have tried to bury the truth, but the truth stood up, told its story, and the world listened.